Welcome to First Things First. It is Monday. I am Jenna Wolfe. He is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We have a big Monday show for you today. Talking Lakers, is LeBron throwing his teammates under the bus? Because there's an executive who certainly thinks he is.
Anonymous.
An anonymous
executive.
One.
We've got it narrowed down. By the end of the show, we're figuring out who it is. My money's on Jeannie Buss.
Speaking of teams out west, the Warriors continue to slide, but we have to start with what happens when Brown becomes black and silver. Antonio Brown is now an Oakland Raider. It was this weekend's big NFL news, the Steelers sending their very disgruntled star wide receiver out west to the Raiders. In return, they received a 3rd and a 5th round pick, and they're hoping a much quieter, calmer locker room. Brown certainly got his money. The Raiders gave him a new contract, $30 million guaranteed, and up to $54 million. All right, Cris Carter, I start with you. Turns out there were a few teams interested in Brown, but Oakland made the final deal. What was your reaction to all of this?
Well, Oakland's a tremendous winner. And just imagine if this had been John Gruden in his first year.
Yeah.
And just imagine what after coming out of the TV booth, tremendous expectations, 10-year guaranteed contract, reportedly. But we went through a year where we saw him give up good young players and trade them. Khalil Mack, trading him before the season to the Bears. Amari Cooper, during the season, trading him to the Dallas Cowboys. And then now you're going to go out, and I like the fact that Mike Mayock was involved in this, and I believe that Mike Mayock will be able to help their front office, because for a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick, I didn't think they were going to get a number 1. Because I knew there was too much baggage out there, and there's some other things out there about AB that other teams aren't going to want. I knew from the beginning he wanted a new contract, so that hurts his ability to be able to fetch a number 1 pick, because if you give them more compensation in draft, they give you less cash. If you give them less compensation in draft picks, then the team is more apt to give you more money. And this worked out for the Oakland Raiders. Tremendous trade for them, getting an elite player, playing in the prime of his career with an offense and an offensive-minded coach that was under a great deal of criticism as if he had forgotten football when he had gone to the TV booth. So the Raiders have to be very, very happy about this trade. Pittsburgh Steelers, they lose up and down the board. Front office, they lose. The ownership, they lose. And the coaching staff loses. And one day, they're going to fire Mike Tomlin. And it's going to be this trade right here, and what happened in this year with AB, it will continually be brought up and discussed because Mike Tomlin lost control of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, because he's gone, will he be able to gain control? But it's fairly obvious that he did lose control of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
On the Raiders side of things, see, when you say, what if this was a year ago? What if this was John Gruden's initial move? Last year, before the season, they traded a 3rd and a 5th for Martavis Bryant and A.J. McCarron.
They said they got the name wrong when they sent the paper, over.
It wasn't supposed to be Martavis Bryant. They were trying to get AB then.
That's what
So think about that. Martavis Bryant and A.J. McCarron, same compensation, now got you Antonio Brown. There is no matter how critical of Gruden and the Raiders you've been, and we've been very critical on this show, this is, of course, a win. They get arguably the best receiver in football. They get him to a place he wanted to go to, which matters only because of his attitude.
Right.
We know he's going to work hard no matter what, but how much of a, quote, distraction, unquote, will he be? And for the Raiders, there is an element of the Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper trade to this in my eyes, which is if they don't get Kyler and if they don't get Haskins in this year's draft, they will be going with Derek Carr. And Gruden will need to determine if he wants to continue forward with Derek Carr after this year if they don't use one of those 1st-round picks on a quarterback. Keep in mind, in 2020, they still have an extra 1st-round pick in that year's draft because of the Khalil Mack trade. So the Raiders could potentially be in the quarterback business a year from now. But now they'll have fair information on Carr because you weren't going to get fair information on Carr with the wide receiving core you had beforehand. And the other part of it is Mike Mayock, and I'm glad you brought him up, because I had real questions about, I know his ability to evaluate players because I've watched him do it for a decade plus, but there's a whole nother part of being a general manager and being a front office guy, which is one is the player evaluation, the other is the player transaction, the player contract, trade compensation. And for the Raiders to not be pushed into, listen, you got a first-rounder for Amari Cooper. We want that first-rounder for Antonio Brown. That's clearly the Raiders held their ground.
Right.
They said, oh, you got a Friday deadline? Okay, we'll let that deadline pass. And once that deadline passed, the Raiders, I think, realized the Steelers are up against it.
Right.
They don't want that bonus to come due. And they were able to get Antonio Brown for the minimal possible compensation you could get a player of this caliber for that isn't, facing some trial this offseason, that could be facing a year-long suspension. They got him for 35 cents on the dollar. It's a huge win for them.
See, you brought up Mike Tomlin, which is interesting, and what didn't work between Tomlin and AB. Now, Antonio Brown is going to have a very different coach, a very different personality, with probably a different stronghold on that Oakland Raiders team. How do you think those two are going to mash?
I don't have any clue. I mean, John Gruden hasn't really had a lot of high-profile players. You'll go back to his days in Oakland when he had Jerry Rice and Tim Brown. When Jerry came over from San Francisco and played with them, they had the outstanding season. Rich Gannon, MVP of the league. They put up tremendous numbers as a group. But I don't know what kind of offense they're going to run. I don't know if they're going to be 3 receivers. I don't know if the offensive line can hold up. I know how he thrives. He thrives in a 3-receiver offense. He has to be able to play all up and down the lineup. You have to be able to hide him. He's also, you got to run some routes for him where he just gets the ball and he's able to get yards after the catch. So to me, I know what AB does. What is Gruden going to do? Don't know that. Their best receiver right now happens to be their tight end. Are they going to lose him in free agency? How much more football does Jordy Nelson have left in him? So I don't know what system John is going to. I know how AB thrives and how he's become the best receiver in the NFL.
That's the football part of it. And then the personalities part of it is I watched John Gruden win a Super Bowl with Keyshawn Johnson. And that Super Bowl hangover honeymoon lasted all of 9 games the following season before Keyshawn got sent home, deactivated for the final 7 games of the season.
Yeah, I would say he won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, and Keyshawn was on the roster.
Oh, correct. I totally agree with that. I wasn't attributing Keyshawn as the main factor behind that Super Bowl. That was a defense-dominated team, but that was a Tampa Bay team that prior to Gruden getting there had given up 2 number ones for Keyshawn. His first year there, they win a Super Bowl, all collectively, Derek Brooks, Warren Sapp, Lynch, all those guys. And then by the midway point of next season, go home, we'll keep paying you. We'd rather you be anywhere but here. Gruden doesn't have a long history that I'm aware of gelling with big-time personalities, particularly
or having a long leash, too.
Correct, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Like, those Tampa teams had some big-time personalities on defense, but Gruden didn't seem to be meddling with that nearly as much. So, but that was also 18 years ago, 15 years ago. So how much has he evolved? How much has he changed? That first year in Oakland, he seemed to push a lot of the big-time personalities out the door. Was that a humbling moment for him? Or was this as simple as, even if it's not with his philosophy, see, wait, we can get this player for that? How could we possibly say no, especially when they had the cap space to give Antonio the contract he wanted?
Look, for us to think there's not going to be some dust-ups, there's going to be some dust-ups. There's going to be some problems. They're going to have some issues on the sideline. How they go forward, to me, is how does Gruden handle an elite player who draws a lot of attention, and how does AB handle the transition from what he was doing in Pittsburgh, where he was frequently late, marching to his own beat, doing things that no one on the staff knew what he was going to do, within the offense, doing some freelancing and getting away with it for a number of years. Who is he going to be when he shows up to the Oakland Raiders? Because typically when you see someone who has that type of personality, when they change, typically there's a change in attitude. Will he get back to being known as the hardest working guy for the Raiders? Because that's who he is also. But which guy shows up? That's going to be the question that he's going to have to answer.
During this football season at the trade deadline, the Houston Texans traded a 4th and a 7th for Demaryius Thomas. Right before last season, Jarvis Landry was traded for a 4th and a 7th for Antonio Brown to be available for a 3rd and a 5th, and for him to be available for a team. It's not like Buffalo was trading for him a 3rd and a 5th where you're like, okay, we're getting him, but what version are we getting? This is one of his preferred destinations. He got his money. He's going to, they are looking for a face of the Oakland Raiders for the move to Vegas. He now is, I would say, head-to-head with Derek Carr is the only two realistic options for that, along with Gruden. This is a huge win for Oakland. For the Steelers, to double back on C's point from earlier, are they going to look back on, wait, how did the the 3Bs era end? With Le'Veon Bell sitting out a year, with Antonio skipping the final week, and then us trading him for 35 cents on the dollar. That's how that
I didn't
era
think they
ended.
would win a championship. I said it for the last couple of years. I didn't think collectively all the things they had going on off the field, the selfishness and the me, look at me, that they have there on that team. I didn't think. So I thought it will definitely be they underperformed.
And there was this narrative that, well, the Steelers just do things differently. That's their family. Well, it turns out doing things differently, at least for them, did not work out. This very public divorce has finally come to an end between Antonio Brown and the Steelers. We'll talk much more about this over the course of the next couple hours. But coming up, how is LeBron coming up short when compared to MJ and Kobe? That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on SiriusXM. We're back right after this. Back here, first things first, we'll get to LeBron James in a second. But first, a couple of big plays from last night. Hawks-Pelicans, John Collins. Watch it.
Most nights, that would be the alley-oop of the night in the league.
No, but
Last
wait.
night, that was not the case.
Oh, but wait.
John Collins been having a bunch of these highlights.
All right, Suns and Warriors, KD, Kevin Durant showing off the passing skills with the no-look to Alfonso McKinney.
That's part of KD's game. We don't see that often. That's a beautiful
Nice pass.
No, because they have so much talent, too. They don't need him to do that, to distribute like that, but he's capable.
The hardworking Dwayne Wade uses every move in his arsenal
Now
to
why
get
is
to
he
the
falling
basket.
down? Now, I'm a big Dwayne Wade fan, but, man, this dude stays on the ground.
Man, that was part of the
He did a
original
little
marketing
flip.
campaign, remember? Adidas, fall down 7, get up 8.
Watch this.
It's part of it.
Yeah. Come on, man. He's trying to get everything out in this last dance here. But
All
here
right,
we
Nick,
go.
here's what you were talking about. More from the game. Derek Jones Jr. with the dunk of the year. Watch it in slow motion.
I mean, it's to his left hand on the right side.
Very seldom you ever going to see someone dunk the basketball and not touch the rim.
Yep.
Man, the catch,
Beautiful.
the athleticism. Now, if you're talking about the greatest athletes in the world, this should be part of the display.
Dwight
Goodness
Howard
gracious.
won a dunk contest doing this. The basically throw dunk.
This guy should be in the dunk contest and have just people just throwing him alleys.
I mean,
he can't dribble. He's not too creative the other way, but just throwing him alleys, that's what he does.
This is the dunk of the year and one of the best in-game dunks we've ever seen. The degree of difficulty, and watch that 1,000 times.
All right, moving on to the Lakers now. Among the many things they have lost, well, Saturday's game, their 5th straight, Lonzo and Ingram both shut down for the year, and perhaps some of LeBron's invincibility? According to an anonymous Western Conference executive, LeBron is, quote, throwing people under the bus every chance he gets. Another executive said, now it's all about deferring and putting blame on somebody else instead of being like an old school guy and saying, I've got to do a better job. Great players and great leaders, that's what they do. That's what Kobe Bryant would have done. That's what Michael Jordan would have done. Nick, what was your reaction to this?
All right, now we're getting a little ridiculous here. Now there are a lot of fair criticism about LeBron and the Lakers for this disastrous season. Nobody denies that. But this anonymous Western Conference executive, unless it's an anonymous executive within the Lakers, I'm really curious where he's getting this information. Because he clearly is saying LeBron is doing more things behind the scenes than he's doing publicly. What, he's calling up a guy that runs a rival team, Denver Nuggets. He's like, let me tell you. And I'm just making up what it was, some team out west. Here's what I know. What I know is that this is a year where LeBron's leadership style, his approach, didn't work. LeBron's embracing of the idea of getting Anthony Davis or anybody else, that clearly didn't work, most notably maybe for the veterans on one-year contracts, because the young players, at least offensively, are playing fine. But this revisionist history that, let me tell you what Kobe would have done, stop it. Everyone, we all saw Kobe. We all know, we saw Kobe in a parking lot. To anyone who would listen, saying, Andrew Bynum, you got me with smush, but come on. Now, Jordan, I think, absolutely made his teammates better to a degree much greater than Kobe did. But Jordan also, the idea that he was warm and cuddly about it, that wasn't his leadership style. Now, his leadership style was incredibly effective, almost scaring his guys into playing their best basketball. Why do you laugh? Do you disagree?
I think it's totally different than that. Even though he was intense, I would say there was no one who was with Michael Jordan on his team that his teammates were afraid just because they had a couple dust-ups. There's been other guys got in fights in practice, but that wasn't Michael's whole mojo.
I wasn't saying, I don't think they were afraid because he punched Steve Kerr. I just meant the standard of excellence was so high, and Jordan's commitment every single night that he's going to show up. To me, there was a factor of, if I know he's going to show up in game 38, I better show up in game 38. So I think saying Jordan got the most out of his teammates is totally fair. But we can't, just because the Lakers have had an injury-riddled, terrible season, we can't all of a sudden change what we've seen from LeBron for the better part of 2 decades, which is he's always made guys around him better. He's always been the ultimate teammate. He's always been a guy who you shoot better on passes from him than from other people. That is what the numbers tell you, and that is what, his teammates will tell you up and down the board.
But it's also, he's LeBron James. He's going to get criticized. So us thinking that there might be some drama around him, yes, we should have been expecting that. Now, if we would have known that at 36 games into 60, they only won 30 games out of the 66 games they played, there would be a lot more drama around LeBron James. So, LeBron, if you don't win, there's going to be more stuff around you. And that's part of being LeBron James. The part that he really missed on was analyzing the type of team. All right, that was a huge mistake. Him, Magic, Pelinka, whoever came up with that was a huge mistake. Him trying to support Anthony Davis or letting people know that he talked to Anthony Davis, that was a huge mistake. So those are the things that LeBron, that he should be, and his camp, like they should feel responsible for. The rest of the season, the injuries, him being injured, I'm sure it's been a very frustrating season, forget Lakers fans, but for LeBron James, because this will be known as the lost season. And if they don't win a championship, we'll look back on this season and be like, wow, it got off to such a bad start and they never recovered.
All that I totally agree with. But which is why I think it's so unnecessary for whomever this Western Conference anonymous executive is to be like, and by the way, he's been a terrible teammate this year. He's been killing his teammates on the record and off the record, and Kobe and Michael wouldn't have done that. Like, this is piling on, maybe because the guy there hadn't been a lot of opportunities to get after LeBron over the last 7.5 years until this season. So now it's, now the Jackals are out, so which I understand that part of it. I just don't think it's accurate to what this season has been. The problem for the Lakers has not been LeBron passing blame around. The problem for the Lakers has been the roster construction, which LeBron had a hand in,
right,
the injuries, and the fact that the team never came together in any way, shape, or form.
No, the team came together. No, we can't at Christmas.
Okay, sure. Post LeBron's injury, they never gelled.
The trade rumors. That's the injury, the trade rumors. Since then, that's when the season got away from him.
It's also been an unprecedented season for LeBron James. He's never had to deal with an injury. He's never missed that many games. He's never had to be a leader and it failed. He's never tried to get someone to come to that magnitude and degree and that publicized, and that didn't work. So maybe this has taken a toll. Maybe not to the degree of what another executive says, but isn't it on the board that things are just crumbling and falling apart behind the scenes?
Well, sure, this has been, I don't know about crumbling and falling apart behind the scenes, but the problem for the Lakers right now is they don't have enough good players. People watched the game on Saturday night. LeBron played 28 minutes because they're doing this minutes restriction. In those 28 minutes, in addition going 30, 10, and 12, the Lakers outscored Boston by 11 points. In the 20 minutes he did not play, they got outscored by 24 points. Such is life when Kuzma's out, when Ingram's out, when Lonzo's out, when Ingram, and we'll talk about it more, but when Ingram and Lonzo are going to be out for the remainder of the season, you just don't have enough high-level or even mediocre NBA players to compete, even if LeBron is playing well. And I don't think anyone would criticize his level of play on Saturday night, or in particular his level of play on the offensive end since he came back from the injury.
Well, since he came back from the injury, the first few games were very, very sluggish. He's definitely not playing at his playing weight. Saturday night against the Celtics, he did look better. And I'm the one that said that LeBron needs to sit down. I believe also LeBron's playing, not only playing for pride, because he wants to be able to show, because he looked a lot more energetic, because the season's over with. Like, this season is lost. Like, you are right. You don't want to blame it on LeBron, but this Lakers season has fallen apart. And you can go from ownership to the front office to the coaching staff and LeBron James.
Player, yeah.
And LeBron James in that, because when you sign LeBron at this stage, we don't expect him to get hurt. Oh, everyone gets hurt. Well, he's LeBron James. He's not supposed to get hurt. So that was a huge part, too, these younger players. And that Anthony Davis thing, that helped the season fall apart in its totality. Veteran players, young players, and LeBron admitting, yeah, me and AD talked about this summer, did not help.
All right, time now for Put a Grade on It, sponsored by CarMax. Joel Embiid had a strong return from his knee injury, put up 33 and 12 in a Sixers win over the Pacers. Both the Sixers and Pacers now tied for that third spot in the Eastern Conference. Nick, put a grade on Joel Embiid's day yesterday.
I give Joel an A. First game back. The defense in the second half, and he's the key of that, was the story of this game. The Pacers scored 30 second-half points. That's remarkable by Philly in a very important game, because that 3 seed out east is critical to avoid that first-round 4-5 matchup. So I give Joel an A.
Oh, he was excellent. I like the fact that they're going to play him in 4- and 5-minute stints. You could see it took some time to get his win. But, man, 28 minutes, 33 points right there. That's getting the most of it. True superstar. I believe, man, he's got the charisma. He's on the board for the next face of the NBA.
So he could be the first international player to ever do it.
Well, he's more American than international.
Because of the college experience?
Well, not college, because how he goes about his business.
Okay.
He's a very American.
Okay.
Take a break. Coming up, is it time to start worrying about the Warriors? That's next on First Things First.
You're saying it's an American thing to try to slide into Rihanna's DMs?
No, not Rihanna, man. Nobody trying to slide into the DMs.
In 5 days, 2 of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet put their perfect records on the line at AT&T Stadium as Errol Spence Jr. takes on Mickey Garcia for the World Welterweight Championship. Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, live on pay-per-view. Order now. Not right this second, but after the show would be a better time. Time for us to go viral. The biggest story of the weekend was Antonio Brown getting traded to Oakland. Here's what AB's son, Otto, thought about him being traded.
Otto, you ready? You ready?
Yeah.
You ready to go, son? Where we going? We going to the Oakland Raiders? You ready?
So the son, Otto, did not get the dad's gift of gab, clearly.
No, that's a cute kid, and we've seen some videos of him playing football.
He's good.
And absolutely.
He's good.
No, he's a cute kid.
Yeah.
AB could take maybe some PR lessons from the young Otto.
Like,
but just
less
flash
is
that
more?
big smile. Don't say quite as much. People will say nice things about you.
Less is more.
Yeah, he's not as cute as the kid, though.
No. Well, obviously, he's not as cute as the kid. He's got a good smile, though.
Good stuff there. All right, time for stories to start your morning, sponsored by Gillette Clear Gel. Now that former Steeler Antonio Brown is settled, attention turns to former Steeler Le'Veon Bell. Rumors are flying about as free agency approaches. Derek Carr started following Bell on Twitter after the Raiders traded for AB. Nick, you think Bell could sign in Oakland?
I'd say it's a possibility. I wouldn't think it's likely. And even if John Gruden embraces the idea of bringing in Antonio Brown for that rock-bottom compensation, trying to all of a sudden bring in Steelers West without as high level of a quarterback, to me, would be a bad idea. Like, I think these guys are 2 great players, but I don't know if you want to, after you usher out 2 of your most high-character guys in a locker room, and Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper, in one offseason, bring in the real question mark of AB and a guy in Le'Veon Bell, who I don't know if it's a character question mark, but maybe decision-making in regards to the drug policy question mark. I wouldn't bring them both in.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with him playing for the Raiders, but they just have more priorities. They need a rusher. Remember Khalil Mack? Yeah. That big gap that he left in the defense, it's still there. They still need a playmaker, safety. So they still have a number of problems, offensive line. So running back, potentially a quarterback, it's one of many needs, but I wouldn't have a problem with them playing together. It's just not the best fit.
All right, to the Cowboys now. Veteran linebacker Sean Lee will be back in Dallas for the 2019 season. That after agreeing to terms on a 1-year, $3.5 million restructured deal to stay with the Cowboys. The injury-prone Lee will turn 33 this summer. See, was this a good move?
Well, it was a good move for him, for Dallas. I believe that with their 2 linebackers that they have, both of them Pro Bowl level players, it's nice to have a veteran who can play 1, 2, 3 spots in case there's an injury. But will he be injured? I believe in playing less snaps, it should be able to help him out, and he should be a great special teams player. So for $3 million, it's a good buy.
We knew that Sean Lee was not going to be on the Cowboys at $7 million, which is what his cap hit and salary, his price tag was going to be before the restructure. We thought it was, or at least I thought it was on the board, he would be cut entirely. I think this is probably the best of both worlds. We know Jalen Smith was excellent last year. See if he continues that form. And Leighton Vander Esch was amazing as a rookie. See if he continues that form. And Sean Lee as a leader and as a veteran and someone in that meeting room, that's worth the money.
Him and Jason Witten, one on the offensive end, one on the defensive side to give him more leadership.
To the NBA now, Sixers and Pacers duked it out yesterday. Sixers dominated thanks to Joel Embiid. He returned to action after missing 8 games. He had 32 points, 12 assists. The Sixers move into a tie now with Indiana for the 3rd best record in the East. Nick, how dangerous is Philly when Embiid is playing like this?
Listen, Embiid was excellent. The defense was suffocating in the second half. Indiana scored 30 points. Embiid with the 33 points, 12 rebounds was a great return for him. And see, very important in the standings, Celtics, Pacers, Sixers, 2 of them are going to be in the 4-5 line.
Yep.
So right now the Sixers got up to the 3 line, tied with the tiebreaker over Indiana. Enormous game for them because they don't want to be playing in that first round 4-5.
Right. There's a number of things that make Philly a tough matchup. They lead the NBA in attendance. They over 20,000. The only NBA team has over 20,000. Also, their ability for Joel Embiid to get you in foul trouble, and they got 4 starters that shoot over 80% from the free throw line. Everyone, of course, Ben Simmons.
Yeah, everyone but Ben.
Moving on
Joel,
to the
too,
Lakers
is a big
now.
name, which is huge. Sorry.
More bad news to go with the existing bad news that there has been the regular season. Both Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball were shut down for the remainder of an already disappointing year. Neither will be needed for the playoff run the team will most likely not be making. Nick, what does this mean for the Lakers now moving forward?
All right, so the Ingram thing is a real big problem, and it's a scary injury, and I understand. Listen, it's deep vein thrombosis. It's blood clot. And it's a blood clot in his arm and his shoulder area as opposed to in his leg, which is more typical. They reportedly caught it early. They think they can deal with it. Serena Williams had a blood clot, came back and is fine. Chris Bosh had bad blood clots, and it ended his career. But for Ingram, let's just assume that because it was caught early, they can deal with it, right? Because that's the only way he's a key point for this team, either trade-wise or otherwise moving forward. He was playing the best basketball of his life since the All-Star game. 6 games, averaging 28 points per game. Averaging. That after throughout the first year and a half of his career.
Never had more than 26
only eclipsed 26 points one time. And so I had said last week that one of the few bright spots for the Lakers was, with the season falling apart, the Anthony Davis trade. They had a more attractive package put together because they were going to have a lottery pick, a good lottery pick, and Ingram was looking better and better. And now for Ingram to have a real question mark about can he be the centerpiece of a trade when he has this injury, when he has this condition, if you will, and can't have 16 games of that level of production. Instead, it could just be an outlier. That's bad news. And for Lonzo, what if the Lakers defense all of a sudden went back to being a top 12 defense when Lonzo came back? You could just say, all right, look, it was a Lonzo effect defensively, which makes him a more attractive trade piece. Instead, they won't see him on the court this year. So this is way worse news than the 5-game losing streak or anything else going on with the team. These 2 young players not playing again this year is a big deal and potentially hugely problematic for them in the trade market.
And if they decide to trade them, they can never say that they know what kind of players they're going to be. If they do put them in a trade, they'll be giving up on them early. You mentioned Ingram playing the best basketball of his career. They also, from the injury standpoint, what if they get lucky? What if they can't move Ingram? They get another free agent to come join LeBron, and then Ingram is able to pick up where he left off next season because of the injury that he can't get traded. Unfortunately for him, it's bad timing. But also, with Lonzo out, with Ingram out, Kuzma's hurt. That's why I sit LeBron. I'd sit him on out. Like, why waste those minutes? You can't even justify, oh, well, the young guys, they're getting more chemistry, more time on the court. No, you're putting minutes onto a superstar that you're going to need those minutes, right? I would I would actually be trying to tank right now to try to get the highest probability of winning the lottery so that I might be able to get Zion also.
And when you bring up the lottery, people should understand it's the better lottery odds, it's not just about Zion. Everyone wants Zion, but it's the better chance of getting the second pick, the third pick, getting a top 6 pick.
But he's the only player that people are mentioning.
No, of course.
Yeah.
I'm just for the audience because they might see if the Lakers, to C's point, if they fall 2 more places in the standings, they all of a sudden would have a 25% chance of a top 4 pick. So even if their chance of Zion is a couple percent, like the ability to get, there's Ja Morant, there's Zion, there's R.J. Barrett, there's 3 guys that people consider blue chippers.
And it's more of an asset.
Right, and it is much more attractive in a trade. One of the arguments I had to not shutting down LeBron is you don't know if you're going to be able to trade these guys. You don't know if you're going to trade all of them or any of them. So more court time with him with these young players is relevant. That, of course,
players aren't even on. Yeah,
right, that's now out the window. Like, that is, we didn't know at the time Ingram was going to have any type of serious situation, and it was being reported they thought Lonzo might be back this week. They're now both done for the year. So that argument as to why LeBron should play doesn't qualify, because LeBron playing with the Caruso and Jonathan Williams, Mo Wagner, that's irrelevant.
Quick question about Lonzo Ball. If we have some semblance of an idea of who Ingram was, especially since we've seen him after the All-Star break, is the jury still out on Lonzo Ball? He's missed a big part of this season. He seems to be kind of injury-prone. Do we know what kind of player he is, or do you need to see another year or so before you could clump him into?
At least another year. No, he's got a problem. I mean, is he going to ever develop a jump shot? He can't shoot free throws. So ultimately, like, how high is his ceiling in the NBA? Now, he did become their best defender, but you don't spend a lottery pick, typically a top 5 pick, for a guy to be a defensive specialist. So there's still so many questions as far as his overall game. Yeah, Lonzo, he needed the full year of year 2 and a full year with LeBron at least to have any idea of was he going to live up to that draft stock. I would say right now the odds are he will never live up to the draft pick, but we don't know what he is. Like, he needs at least another full season under his belt.
All right, let's move on to the Warriors. Not a great weekend for the best team in basketball. That's because they lost to the second worst team in basketball last night. In fact, they've lost 6 of their last 10 games, and Kevin Durant left in the 4th quarter last night with an ankle injury. He was overheard in the tunnel yelling, "We need to be playing championship basketball." However, Klay Thompson had a different take. Take a listen.
I expect our crowd to be a little more into it too. Like, I know it's not the playoffs, but it is our last go-around at Oracle. At least you can stand up or something. We make a good play, especially in the beginning. We need that energy, especially this time of the year. It's hard to conjure up energy every single night because you're looking forward to the playoffs and that run. So we expect our fans to kind of, bring that from the jump. You can't, it's like us though, you can't bring it every night, but still it helps when it doesn't matter if we're playing the Suns or the Bucks, whoever it is, we need that energy from them because we feed off that.
We don't hear a lot of sentiment from Klay Thompson generally, but a lot of emotion after this loss. How alarming is the Warriors' recent slump, CC?
It's not alarming to me. Like, we've seen teams. The reason why teams have a hard time putting together 3 or 4 seasons in a row at a championship level, because you get distracted. It becomes very, very difficult. The expectations change. The players, even their expectations have changed as far as going to the arena. It's the same arena, but they're not putting on the same performance they put on the last 3 or 4 years. So the fans are reacting in that way. I take exception to what he was saying, because I was watching this game, and the Warriors got off to their typical start, had a nice double-digit lead in the 1st quarter. But they gave up 40 points.
In the 2nd quarter.
In the 2nd quarter. So their defense is not nearly on the level. Now, we haven't seen all the players playing well together. I would say Iguodala is not the same player. Sean Livingston is not the same player off the bench. Draymond, as an offensive player, is not nearly the same. So, Klay, when you're talking about the people at Oracle, because I'm sure they're the same people. All right. Now, do they come to the game with different expectations? They might. But what they've seen on the court is a different Warriors team. They're not as deep as they have been. So the basketball that they're playing, even based on their record, as you can see, is not up to the standard that these fans have been used to. You got them spoiled, Klay.
And listen, I really, really like Klay Thompson. This, to me, was a foolish comment. He said it. He said, he's like, listen, obviously we can't bring it every night, but hopefully the fans could. That's not how this works. Right. And, like, when the Warriors have have made it clear that they are going to take the regular season the last few years kind of for granted. Some nights your fans are going to. Now, what is so, it's not even confusing, it's almost predictable about the Warriors at this point, was their games this weekend. I said last week that if they were the Warriors team that we all thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, they'd blow out the Nuggets. They would remind everybody of that. They would have a real intensity. They would understand the 1 seed is on the line on Friday night with the team trying to chase them, and they would play some of their best basketball. And they had a near 20-point lead at halftime, and they beat the Nuggets by 17 points. But it's like the moment they did that, it's been since February 12th since they've won back-to-back basketball games. Think about that. It's almost been a month since they won back-to-back games. But the other point you made, C, about Draymond. All right, so Draymond obviously is out there for his defense, and they allow 40 points in the second quarter, and Draymond's defense has not been up to the level it had been in recent years. But if we show the last meaningful play of the game, this is where Draymond has been killing them. Let me just set the stage a bit. Steph's bringing the ball up the court. They're down 3 points. Steph is double-teamed the entire time. And when he throws it to Draymond, you can see it. No one is guarding Draymond, and he didn't even look to the basket. It's a 3-point game. The 73-win season, Draymond shoots that ball. 2 years ago, post-73-win season, he at least turns and faces, so they have to collapse on him, and you can go good shot, great shot. Draymond is being guarded on that possession like a Ben Simmons. Like, we know you're not shooting, so we can just use the man away from you. That, once Kevin Durant goes out of the lineup, as he did midway through the fourth quarter, all of a sudden that offense can be quelled even with the great Steph Curry on the court. Like, that play right there is telling, because guys are just saying, all right, Draymond, no problem whatsoever. He was 38%. The 73-win year. He was 34% the following season. Now he's under 25%, and guys in big spots are guarding him accordingly.
Steph Curry said after the game, it seems like the difference between this year and last year is, yeah, last year we had a little slide, but we were injured. This year we're having the slide. We're all healthy. It seems like that's an issue right now. They can't seem to get it all together. Is that how it feels to you, see, watching this year and watching last year, that they can't quite put it all together?
Well, last year they did have a built-in excuse, and last year they still played with more energy. You didn't see the inconsistency this late in the season when all the guys were healthy. But they really have a problem, because we won't ever be able to give them enough credit, because what a collection of shooters they have is really special. But, man, they were a great defensive team. And that's how you win championships, because you can't shoot threes every night and depend on it. Ask Houston when they went cold last year. You have to be able to play some defense. And that is what made the Warriors so special. That's what has made them one of the best teams, not only of talent, but as far as record. And that's why you could put them in oh, man, would this team beat the Bulls? Would this beat the old Lakers? Because on the defensive end, they've been special.
On that note, in the last 30-plus years, only 2 teams have won a championship without a top 10 defense. One of the Shaq, Kobe Lakers, and LeBron's team in Cleveland. The Warriors right now are the 14th ranked defense in basketball. So they're not going to get up into the top 3 as they had been early on. But if you stay out of the top 10, historically speaking, you're in the danger zone as far as being a championship team.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, who won the Antonio Brown trade? It's ahead on First Things First. Welcome back to the show. Former All-Pro running back and new dad. 2 weeks new dad. Brian Westbrook joins us.
Congrats,
New
man.
Dad again.
Yes.
Number three in the last call.
Number 3 in finals.
Finals.
Let's see. How are you, man?
Good to have you on.
Did you get that handled? I mean,
I'm in the process.
come on, real men get it handled.
Get it handled quick.
All right,
I'm trying to work my way up to that.
Nothing is off limits, apparently, in this show.
Get that handled.
Brian,
Don't come back on this
Antonio
show,
Brown went into the weekend as a Steeler, and he came out as a Raider. The Steelers traded him to Oakland in exchange for a 3rd and 5th round pick. For Pittsburgh, if nothing changes, they are left now with Juju Smith-Schuster as their top receiver. Schuster tweeted this picture on Sunday with the caption, "I'm ready." All right, Brian, where does this trade leave the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, I think in football, as you guys know, it's 2 different things, in the locker room and on the field. And I think in the locker room, this leaves Mike Tomlin an opportunity to really re-injuvenize his character, his culture, the things that he wants. And it also allows Ben Roethlisberger an opportunity to become the leader on that football team again. I remember when T.O. left us. Now Donovan McNabb has the opportunity to step up as the main leader, as the guy in that locker room. But then you transfer onto the field, and you lose 15 touchdowns. to me, with the aging quarterback, with the running back that the second year trying to get going with James Conner, he's going to see 8-man boxes. Juju Smith-Schuster only seeing single coverage. He's going to see double coverage now. Yep. It's a different thing on the field, and I saw it the same way. When T.O. left, now I'm seeing 7, 8-man boxes instead of 5, 6-man boxes. A little bit harder to run that way. We're seeing different coverages, a little bit harder to catch the ball. There's going to be a lot of different guys that need to step up. Connor, McDonald, Juju Smith-Schuster, all those guys are going to have to step up. Life without those 15 touchdowns, best receiver in the game, is totally different than with them.
Yeah, and let's look at the last 5 to 10 years. This Pittsburgh Steelers defense hadn't been real good. How the Pittsburgh Steelers have won those games have been based on their special teams and on that offense. So I believe that they'll have a competent offense around Ben. I believe they'll get their tight ends more involved. I do believe they have talented tight ends that were underutilized. But, man, they're in for a rude awakening because you can say what you want. High school coach taught me this, George Smith. Hey, Chris, it ain't the X's and O's, it's the Willies and the Joes.
That's right.
And we got them, Chris. And when we got them, people will see that. They don't have them in Pittsburgh anymore. So it's an opportunity for not only for Ben Roethlisberger to be able to tinker with his image and his leadership, but more importantly, Mike Tomlin. Because I believe this is going to be one of the stones that break the back of Mike Tomlin with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they have been very, very patient. But when you run the type of organization that they have run, and we have seen the type of talent that left that locker room with no to little compensation, it's criminal. It's criminal to have 2 of the all-time best at their position. And what do you say? Because when you look at the players, next year they're going to have drafted that 3rd-round pick and that 5th-rounder. You got nothing but air for Le'Veon Bell leaving. So now you're going to see, and you got these 2 players.
For those 2 players.
For those 2 players?
For arguably the best running back and arguably the best wide receiver in all of football. And so this might ultimately fall on Mike Tomlin, but the Steelers front office got to look itself in the mirror now. Because each step of the way, they misjudged, I would argue, both of these situations. Yeah. With Antonio Brown, this time last year, they redid his contract, not to give him more money, but to free up cap space for them for the 2018 season, which they needed in part because they had franchise tag Le'Veon Bell, and he was going to have a $15 million cap hit. That's why Antonio Brown's cap hit, if he were on the Steelers this year, was going to be $22 million. And with him off the Steelers, it's $22 million. Antonio Brown on the Steelers in 2019 is the biggest dead money hit in NFL history. Wow. That's self-inflicted. That is because of a restructure they did, because they didn't see this coming. Additionally, one of the reasons Le'Veon didn't agree to a long-term deal, one of the reasons Antonio was upset with his contract was they have a general philosophy of except for the quarterback, we're not guaranteeing any dollars after year 1. Well, now you have had maybe the best running back and maybe the best wide receiver go out the door, and what you got back was the 66th and 141st picks of the draft.
And perhaps a little peace in that locker room. But does that peace translate to success on the field?
Well, you get peace in the locker room, then the other teams in your division are getting better. Baltimore, they're trying to get better with Lamar Jackson. The Cleveland Browns somehow continue to get better, a lot more talent there. So you may have some peace in the locker room, but wins on the field keep people having jobs. That's the most important thing. When you let that type of talent go, it's hard to get those wins. 15 touchdowns, it's a reason why Antonio Brown has had 6 seasons over 100 yards, a bunch of catches. He's a special player.
B, tell me, would you rather have peace or us winning and fighting like cats and dogs?
Oh, no, we want to win. I mean, listen, I want everybody to get paid, and it's nice to have peace, but winning games is the reason why we're there. Winning championships is certainly our goal.
And there are no good locker rooms in the NFL when you lose.
No.
Yeah. You know what? We don't get sound bites by them because we don't even go there for sound bites because that's a losing team. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are the winning organization. This is one of the biggest challenges that they would have faced in recent history. How do you survive taking that cap hit? Because for me, when they came back compensation 3, 4, 5, I would have laughed at him and told him, listen,
not enough. It's
going to play football for me. He's going to play football for me. He's not going to play football for anyone else. I'm not giving up the best receiver in the game because he's not happy. And it's about them guarantees. He wanted a new contract. He could have salvaged the situation with the quarterback.
Well, and the other element is the guy whose tweet we showed, Juju. Juju's numbers say he's ready to step into a #1 role. That's what his numbers say. We took a deeper look at it before the show. he was double teamed on less than 1% of snaps last year.
Correct.
And the majority of that 1% happened in the final week when Antonio wasn't there. So Antonio was double teamed on nearly 10% of snaps last year. Juju's going to be facing a totally different football reality this coming season than his rookie season. He had teams that were worried about Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. Last year, he had a situation where teams were worried about Antonio Brown. Now, who's the guy you want to take away on Pittsburgh? Juju. And maybe
No, James Conner.
Okay.
Yeah, James Conner. It's not Juju.
You start there with James Conner, but
Yes,
on passing
because their
downs,
offensive line is very good, and that's what they decided to do. These people over here, you didn't want it, so we're going to refortify the guys who have been good to us. Foster, Pouncey. We're going to extend those guys, the center and guard.
But on pass, you were going to say on passing
on
downs.
passing downs, at some
All
point-
coverage is going to be tilted towards
Yeah, the
Juju.
passing game will be centered around Juju and the tight ends.
and yeah, Vance McDonald, a very good tight end.
Vance McDonald, yes.
Very good tight end. But listen, they're going to have to throw the ball. This is a passing league right now.
Yep.
Of course, James Conner went out there and handled his business in the absence of Le'Veon Bell. But it's a passing league. Juju will feel the difference without having Antonio Brown there.
And in a passing league, only the Green Bay Packers threw the ball on a higher percentage of downs than the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. So are they going to be able to remake on the fly in an offseason the type of team they are? Because I don't think you can throw the ball 68% of the time the way they did last year without Antonio Brown. And I don't know. James Conner was very good early in the season, trailed off a bit late. Can he be a workhorse back throughout the season at a high level? These are all real questions they have.
You have to factor in age and health of your quarterback as well. How healthy can Ben Roethlisberger be entire season-wise, and how much can that age and his deterioration because he's getting older, how will that be handled in that locker room as well?
Yeah, I don't think Ben at this point, because him and his agent are talking with Pittsburgh about an extension. To me, Ben Roethlisberger not signing no extension to hand the ball off.
No.
Okay, so regardless of it, we try to put an offense around, okay, what's our talent level? So we'll try to highlight the talent level. The talent level on that offense starts with that quarterback. And it's not his ability to be able to hand the ball off. It's to be able to throw the ball down the field, to be able to vary the offense, call audibles, and to be able to get them into the right plays consistently. So even though they don't have the talent, now, I can say this, the Pittsburgh Steelers, in the last 15 years, they have drafted wide receivers better than any team in the National Football League, and it's not even close. They don't use high compensation to be able to get their players, but, man, they have developed 4 or 5 guys who were featured in offenses either in Pittsburgh or Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, when guys who went other places like so. They have done a tremendous job of cultivating wide receiver talent there.
This organization took a big hit PR-wise this offseason. You had the general manager coming out and talking about 52 kids and a quarterback, all the fighting with Antonio Brown, the way the Le'Veon Bell situation ended. How much of a public relations makeover, if you will, does this organization need to put itself through to get back to at least the level of the standard it was playing?
Let's see if Mike Tomlin can continue his streak of not having a losing season. Like, the worst they've ever been in the last decade is 8-8. So if they come out next year and despite everything, last year they missed the playoffs. If next year they come out and they get to 10 wins, then that's the makeover you need. If they come out and they have the first losing season the Steelers have had in over a decade, then it just continues the trend you're talking about.
Brian, we'll see you a little bit later in the show. We have to take a break. Coming up, Antonio Brown's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, joins us. That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, the Raiders made the first big splash of the NFL offseason, trading for Antonio Brown, giving him a new deal worth up to $54 million. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, joins us now to help us sort through all of it. Drew, good morning. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Good to be with you guys. It's going to be a busy day. The start of NFL free agency. I'm in my office, ready to go.
I'm sure. Well, we appreciate the time. Let's start. Take us back to Friday. How did this all come together? Because things had been changing throughout the course of last week.
Yeah, well, evidently the Steelers and the Raiders agreed on a deal compensation-wise. And then the Raiders got permission to discuss a deal with us. We had shared with the Steelers all along that we would be looking to adjust Antonio's contract. We felt that he deserved to be the highest paid receiver in football moving forward, and so that was important. We engaged in those discussions with the Raiders, and ultimately we're able to get a deal done. John Gruden can be pretty persuasive.
Drew, this is Cris Carter. Thanks for coming on, and congratulations on getting the deal done. You mentioned John Gruden and the role that he played. A couple questions. In trying to get AB to Oakland, did John Gruden express to you who would be the quarterback? Because I heard an interview where you talked about Derek Carr being the future in Oakland as the quarterback.
Every indication that we got was that Antonio would be catching passes from Derek Carr. We never discussed with the Raiders anything other than Antonio's situation, but it certainly seemed to us, based upon Derek Carr's involvement, his interaction with Antonio, that those two would become a dynamic duo moving forward.
In your opinion, Drew, why wasn't the situation in Pittsburgh salvageable? Because we know the Steelers multiple times wanted it to be salvageable. Why wasn't it?
It's true that there were discussions about potentially trying to work things out. But after 9 historical years, it really was time for Antonio to move on and get a fresh start with another organization. Unfortunately, relationships were really not at a level that they needed to be for Antonio and the organization to continue effectively. You've got to have a strong relationship moving forward, and that just wasn't the case anymore. We met with the Steelers. We met with Mr. Rooney, Kevin Colbert, the general manager, and we both agreed, not just Antonio, we both agreed it would be best for Antonio to be traded.
Drew, how much of the way that relationship ended was because of AB's and Antonio's relationship with the quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, when you guys went in to ask for a trade, and not just with the Pittsburgh Steeler brass?
Well, that would really be a better question for Antonio and Ben Roethlisberger. I would just say, as a whole, things really deteriorated that last week of the season, and then shortly after the season. The NFL is like anything else. It's the relationship between players and coaches and the organization, economics and contracts. All of those things are fluid. And unfortunately, at the end of the year, it broke down. And it was time, after I said 9 terrific years, that Antonio would be better off finding a new home, and better for the Steelers to move in a different direction. And we were able to work that out. And hopefully everybody won here. The Steelers, the Raiders, and, of course, our client, Antonio.
One more question about the very end. Do you think that it was handled on the very end of the very end, the Week 17 game, the days leading up to it, the right way by your client? Or do you think that could have been handled maybe a little differently and still gotten to this result that you guys wanted?
Well, I was inside the whole process, and I support Antonio 100%. He wanted to play in that game. Unfortunately, the Steelers decided not to. And that was really the beginning of this deterioration. I'm not going to characterize anything that the Steelers did, whether they handled it right or wrong. I support my client 110% from the beginning through the end. And listen, we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards. We're excited about the future.
Drew, I know you're excited about the future. A little note as far as moving forward. Last week, there were a lot of rumors as far as Buffalo being involved and Buffalo wanting to bring AB to Buffalo. Can you get us straight on that? Is the truth of this that Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo could not come to compensation agreement, and it was not Antonio who vetoed going to the Buffalo Bills?
What I can tell you is that trade was never close to happening, in my opinion. I don't think that the Steelers and the Bills were able to reach agreement. There wasn't any other characterization besides that. Again, guys, I deal with the Bills, the Steelers, the Raiders, all 32 teams. I have a positive relationship with all 3 of those clubs. And I'm certainly not going to get into any details or make anybody look bad. I think all 3 of those organizations We've got clients on a lot of them. LaShawn McCoy with the Bills, some great players on the Steelers,
Sure.
and we've got some terrific clients on the Raiders as well.
Hey, Drew, you've had a chance to talk to Antonio, I'm sure, over the past 2 days with all of this going on. What has he said? How excited is he about matching up with John Gruden and that offense out there in Oakland? He's really elated. This is a dream team here. This is a great fit for Antonio. We, like everyone else, think the world of John Gruden. He's one of the all-time great NFL coaches in my estimation, and Antonio's. We've got one of the top quarterbacks in the league for the Oakland Raiders. We've got Raiders Nation. Antonio's excited about playing in Oakland this year, going to Las Vegas. That's going to be a thrilling situation moving forward. The Raiders have great mystique, the silver and black. The Raiders are one of the marquee franchises in recent NFL history. Madden and everything else and all the Hall of Famers that they have, the great, great tradition, all the championships, Al Davis, just win, baby. You know, this is a fun fit, a great fit, and we believe Antonio and the Raiders are going to be very successful moving forward.
Drew, obviously, without naming names, I'm curious if you have any clients that have reached out to you since this went down and looked at it and said, hold on. AB had 3 years left on his deal, no guaranteed money on his deal, was unhappy where he was at. Now he has a lot of guaranteed money, a new contract, is happy where he's at, and he got it by simply saying, I want out, almost NBA style. I demand a trade. I'm not showing up. Trade me. Do you think this could be the start of something bigger for guys, it's a very select list, that have the type of reputation as far as on-the-field accomplishment as Antonio Brown, or is this an outlier, a black swan event that we won't see duplicated?
Hard to say. Every case is different. Every player has different reasons for wanting to change teams or get a new contract. I think that if you're an agent and a player and you have a similar situation as Antonio's, then you should definitely be aggressive and try to put yourself into a healthier situation. I certainly would encourage players and representatives to be aggressive to find a great fit. The NFL is a very tough business. Guys have a lot of pressure on them. Players get cut all the time with contracts. Players can sign deals 1 year and get released the next. You'll see that every day this time of year. Why shouldn't a player, if he's uncomfortable with his situation and has the ability to improve it, why not go and get it? Of course, I think it should be more commonplace. Of course, I hope this becomes more common. Of course, I've heard from several clients to emulate this, and only time will tell if more people will follow Antonio's lead.
All right, Drew, we thank you so much for joining us this morning. All the best to Antonio as he moves forward over the course of the next couple months and he gets set to be Oakland Raider. We have much more First Things First right after this. Welcome back to the show. Yahoo senior NBA writer Vincent Goodwill joins the show. I get excited and a little bit nervous when Vincent shows up.
How are you? The show,
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Apologies.
No problem, Jenna.
Vince, we'll get to the Warriors in a second, but first...
In your first life, were you a butcher?
Oh, that's not nice.
No, that was funny.
Not really. Ben Simmons gets the pass from Embiid at half court, drives past everyone for the two-handed slam right there.
You know that's his favorite spot, Jenna, in that restricted area.
Always killing Ben Simmons.
The only
You knew
spot.
it was coming.
Bro, he can't shoot. He can't outshoot none of us. Well, maybe Nick.
What? How are
Hawks
you
and
going?
He can
Pelicans.
outshoot you.
0%. 0%.
John
Let's argue about this another
reaching
time.
back.
Acting like I can't shoot.
Hawks,
There you
we
go.
appreciate it. They stay on our highlight tapes. Collins, bright young player.
And most nights, this would be the alley-oop of the night, going up and getting it, but not last
because
night.
Derek Jones Jr. played basketball last night, the dunk of the year.
Vinny, didn't Dwight Howard win a dunk contest doing this?
Yes, like literally in a contest, and he did this in the game. I don't even know if his fingertips touched the rim.
No, no touching the rim. This was an amazing athletic move here.
The Heat got some great athletes, man. Bam Adebayo's a hell of an athlete, too.
They need basketball
James
players.
Johnson. Yeah, fair enough.
That would help.
All right, Vince, let's move on to the Golden State Warriors. Not a great weekend for the best team in basketball. That's because they lost to the second worst team in basketball last night in the Suns. In fact, Warriors have lost 6 of their last 10 games, and they lost Kevin Durant in the fourth quarter last night with an ankle injury. Durant was overheard in the tunnel yelling, "We need to be playing championship basketball." However, Klay Thompson had a different take. Take a listen.
I expect our crowd to be a little more into it too. Like, I know it's not the playoffs, but it is our last go around at Oracle. At least you can stand up or something. We make a good play, especially in the beginning. We need that energy, especially this time of the year. It's hard to conjure up energy every single night because you're looking forward to the playoffs and that run. So we expect our fans to kind of, bring that from the jump. You can't, it's like us though, you can't bring it every night, but still it helps when it doesn't matter if we're playing the Suns or the Bucks, whoever it is, we need that energy from them because we feed off that.
Yes, Vince, they can bring it every night. They should bring it every night. They're paid to bring it every single night. How surprising is this recent slump that the Warriors have been on? How surprising is that to you?
Not surprising at all. I think Klay Thompson giving us a soundbite once every 3 years is more surprising than the team sort of going through it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think, guys, when you have a team that's on its run to go to its 5th straight NBA final, the large part of it is basically its core minus Kevin Durant, and you're trying to win your 3rd straight title. I go back and look at history. When you look at the Bulls and their championship runs, the 3rd year was the toughest. The Lakers in the Shaq and Kobe year, 2002, they were on fumes. I just think it's hard to sustain this level of effort, concentration, and just interest. Like, we're in the doldrums of the season now. Usually you get a spark at different points of the year. At some point, it was Boogie Cousins coming back. At the beginning of the year, it was just these guys coming back together. Now they're looking at the calendar and saying the playoffs are in 5 weeks. This is what we're gearing up for. And I think also, guys, part of it, they have 2 liabilities. One is DeMarcus Cousins on defense, and the other one is possibly Draymond Green on offense.
Yes.
Because he can no longer shoot, and he's no longer being aggressive in terms of driving to the basket to set up other guys. Before, you would see him drive to the basket on plays and draw defense. Now, he doesn't even do that. He just waits around for the dribble handoff, and I think that's something that he's going to have to sort of adjust. They're going to have to adjust, maybe not play Boogie Cousins as much in the playoffs because their margin for error is thinner, and teams are now catching up to the way that they play.
The point you made about Draymond, that's how the game ended last night. They don't have to be 3 hunting on this play. There's 20 seconds left. They're down 3. Steph has doubled the entire time up the court, and look, Draymond. You're totally right. It's like, I got the ball, let me give it right back to you. It's like the kid on offense on that play, he looked like the kid in high school that doesn't usually play and got the ball. It's like, where's the best guy?
Yeah, well, he was 0 for 3 at that point. They weren't good from three-point land, and he shot an air ball on one also.
Right.
So when you shoot an air ball from three-point land and they throw it to you in a critical situation, you're looking to hand off. I think your point about, because we've seen players go in and out of shooting, but Draymond used to be more athletic and drive to the bucket. And that's where I think that his injury to his toe, he's got a serious toe injury that he's been battling all season. And that's what takes away some of that athleticism. That's what takes away him being a real triple threat, that if he could pump fake and get into the lane, he still could create because he's a great passer. So this team, we can say, oh, you might be bored. Yeah, because the Bulls, that 3rd repeat, I think they lost to a Timberwolves team during the regular season. We know other teams that tried to three-peat. Yeah, there were awful losses during the regular season. But this team, of the last 5 teams, is not the best team. So I think that in itself that they would struggle. Bench depth, they're not as strong. Livingston is not playing as well. Iggy not playing as well. Draymond, you talked about not shooting the ball as well. I think he's averaging 7 points a game.
Draymond, yes.
Yeah, 7 points a game.
14, 10, and 8 was their 73-win season for Draymond. 7, 7, and 7 is this season for Draymond, and the percentages are killers across the board. And your point on the bench, see, they have the 2nd lowest scoring bench in basketball. Now, I would be a lot more concerned or legitimately concerned about the Warriors if I hadn't seen Friday night. Friday night, it's like, oh, there's a big game, team trying to chase us. We're going to whoop you in the first half, win the game at halftime, and coast home. But then on Sunday comes along, and they try to sleepwalk against one of the 2 worst teams in basketball, and they get beat. But I want to go back to your original point you said about DeMarcus Cousins. Would the Warriors right now be better without DeMarcus Cousins on the team?
I don't know if they would be better, but they wouldn't be as talented. And I think they wouldn't be as diverse, because I think in playoff basketball, if they have these off shooting nights where Steph and Claire, 7 for 28 from 3, you can at least diversify your offense enough to throw it down there to a guy and say, okay, you know what, Boogie, get us a couple buckets, spread the offense out, and those scoring droughts won't be as prolonged. My problem with Golden State is they don't feel threatened by anybody. They don't feel threatened by Houston. They can lose to Houston on Wednesday night and not care. They whoop Denver every time someone says, oh, here's a statement game against Denver because they're the team that's chasing you. The only team that they feel remotely sort of worried about is Oklahoma City.
Really?
Yeah, I've talked to players on Golden State. They don't feel Houston is as much of a threat. When you beat a team on their 7th game on their home floor, the fear factor is gone. Oklahoma City, they respect them because they can defend and because you got 2 high-level players in Paul George and Russell Westbrook, but I don't even think they fear them. I just think they respect them more than any other team in the West.
The play of Boogie and Draymond, is that the kind of stuff that changes with we talk about the switch going on and off when the playoffs come? I mean, do you really think this team is going to suddenly get it together in the next 5 weeks?
Well, Draymond, his shooting has gone down drastically since 2016.
He's also not taking shots.
No, he's not taking them, but I think his intensity rises. If you look at their defense, their team defense is not where it should be. But teams are scoring more than they were in 2016. So before, you could have a third-quarter rush where you could play 8 tough minutes of defense, put yourself up by 20, and coast the rest of the way. Now you're doing that, and teams are taking the other 20 minutes left in the game, and they're coming back. The fear factor for the Warriors is not there as much as it was before. And yeah, they can turn it on, but sometimes you turn on that switch now, electricity ain't coming on.
Well, and and we've seen that for them in the loss a few days ago or last week where they hit the switch. They, after being down the whole game, took the lead in the third quarter and then lost. And then the other team came back, can't remember exactly what it was, the game before the Celtics game, and lost. And they got blown out by Boston. The number Cris keeps bringing up is the defense. It was a top 5 defense their first 2 championship seasons, top 3 defense actually. Last year was a top 8 defense. This year it's 14th. This year, as far as 5-man lineups in the NBA, all 5-man lineups across all rosters, the Warriors' starting 5 is the fifth worst defensively since Boogie came into the lineup. Like, that is the question. The question is, all right, if in the playoffs Iggy gets back to being Iggy, Draymond steps it up a bit, will they be okay with Boogie on the bench? And more importantly, will Boogie be okay with him being on the bench?
He's going to have to be because they're going to go to that death lineup.
Yeah.
With
the original death lineup.
The original death lineup with Draymond at the 5 playing the back line. And I think Draymond, you can depend on Draymond bringing it more on defense than you can on any single other entity that's struggling with them right now.
All right, Vince, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Take a break. Coming up, will more players follow AB's lead after he forced his way out of Pittsburgh? That is next on First Things First. Player of the Year candidate Marcus Howard, defending champion Villanova, and the rest of the Big East battle it out for conference supremacy. The 2019 Big East tournament tips off at Madison Square Garden March 13th through the 16th on Fox, FS1, and the Fox Sports app.
It's a great event. We were there last year. That's an awesome
Let's go,
event
Nova. You're limping into the playoffs. Let's go.
Time for us to go viral. Yesterday in the Atlantic Sun Conference Championship, Scotty James of Liberty pulled off one of the worst flops of all time. Look at this. Give him an Oscar for this. Just watch it.
I mean, this is you know how you can review targeting in college football? This should be reviewable, and this player should be ejected for the rest of this game and the first half of the next game, just like the college football targeting ejection. What an embarrassment. That is an all-time flop.
I want the whole university, because they're a Christian institution. The whole university pray for that man.
And as a Christian institution, that's got to be a sin, right? Trying to mislead the official, trying to gain an unfair advantage.
No need to count his sins, okay? On national TV. All right, he was faking. There's a lot of fakes out there. All right? There's a lot of faking going on out there.
Okay, fair enough.
But Liberty, pray for that man.
Liberty won the game, I believe, and so they're going to be in the NCAA tournament.
Liberty's been on our highlights. A bunch. Is somebody being paid up there on our staff with Liberty?
Time for stories to start your morning, sponsored by Gillette Clear Gel. Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball were shut down for the remainder of an already disappointing Lakers season. Neither will be needed for the playoff run the team will most likely not be making. CC, what does this mean for the Lakers now moving forward?
It should mean they should shut LeBron down. I mean, you're not spending any extra time with the young players out there. Ingram, man, he was more impressive in what we saw this season. Faced some adversity, really improved his game, a good ball handler, better shooter than we thought. So you like where his game is right now. Lonzo, we don't know what we have.
You said last week that the worst thing that could happen for the Lakers is LeBron suffering a significant injury again going into the offseason. The second worst thing might be this Brandon Ingram news, where he is not going to be able to play again the rest of the year to build off of what had been the best 6-game stretch of his career, averaging 28 a game, and where there's going to be question marks about his health when you are trying to potentially deal him this summer. He's being shut down with blood clots essentially in his right arm, and so this is something, hopefully they caught it early and he's okay, but this is a big deal for him and for the team.
To the NFL now. That former Steeler Antonio Brown is settled. Attention turns to former Steeler Le'Veon Bell. Rumors flying about as free agency approaches, and the Raiders are considered to be a sleeper team for the running back. CC, what do you think of the Raiders possibly signing L. Bell as well?
I like L. Bell. He's a great football player. We haven't talked about how good he is as a running back. I mean, he is a generational talent. Best all-round back that we have in the NFL. Running the ball out of the backfield, he's the best. But the Raiders have more holes than that. That's the only reason why I don't want him on the Raiders. Man, they need a pass rusher. Oh, Khalil Mack, he's not there anymore. They need a playmaking safety. They need offensive line help. So I don't have a problem with him and AB being back together. My problem is they have huge gaping holes on that football team.
A running back of his caliber tends to be a luxury in today's NFL, and the Raiders are a team where they don't have so much cap space that they can afford that type of luxury before they address the other major issues on their team. We know that an offense with AB and Antonio Brown can be a dynamic and dominant one, but I think there are other teams where he's a better fit.
All right, speaking of AB, the Steelers sending their very disgruntled star wide receiver out west to the Raiders. In return, they'll get a 3rd and 5th round pick, and they're hoping a much quieter, calmer locker room. Brown got his money. The Raiders gave him a new contract, $30 million guaranteed, up to $54 million. Nick, did AB provide a blueprint now for players moving forward? I'm not happy. I want out. This is how it works.
This is what I think. I think there are very few players that check all the boxes AB did, which is the level of production, the consistency of production, the clear steel will to, at least whether he was bluffing or not, just say, maybe I'll just retire. Like, you've got to have made a lot of money. So if the team calls your bluff, it's a credible bluff, all those things. But he's not the only player in the league that checks those boxes. And we live in a world where 10 months ago, the power dynamic in the NFL was as such that Aaron Rodgers couldn't even keep the quarterback coach he wanted. And 10 months later, Antonio Brown, no shows, no calls, week 17, acts a fool in the media, submarines his team's trade value, or his trade value for his preceding team, and gets exactly what he wants.
Exactly.
And the team that gets him has to give up minimal compensation. They then give him a new contract. He goes where he wants. So I don't think there's a long list of players that could exert this type of pressure. But he's not one of one. And so I'm curious whether or not there might be other guys that look at this and say, all right, well, we hear the NFL so often the teams preach about how awful distractions could be. Well, that's essentially what happened with Antonio Brown, right? They thought he would be a distraction if they brought him back. He was under contract. They could have done what Cris said earlier, which was a 3rd and a 5th. Nah, man, we're good. We'll bring him back in. They didn't. And so I don't think it's the NFL all of a sudden overnight switches to the NBA model where players have total control. But this is more power than we've seen a player be able to exert in quite some time. And I don't think he'll be the only person that tries this route. Whether or not it's successful or not, we'll see.
Of course, our fans who watch the show won't be surprised by this, but Nick and I are on total different spectrums. I don't believe this will happen again for a number of reasons. For one, organizational-wise, we've never seen it. You said that earlier. We've never seen a team take a $20 million, $21 million cap hit. Oh, so someone's going to do that again? So, no, I don't think so. What about a 3rd and a 5th round pick for the best wide receiver in the game? Is someone going to do that? No, probably not. So the combination of the rareness to not only what he did, the leverage he had, but an organization willing to take that because that's Pittsburgh deciding that, you know something, we'd much rather not have him here, so we're going to take the cap hit and we're going to sell him at less than market value. So that's the reason why I don't. This has nothing to do with the overall leverage, the collective bargaining agreement and all that. There's too many things that happen perfectly for this to be able to pull off, and I just don't believe that you'll be able to have all those things happen the way they did here.
The question I would have, though, is that even most players wouldn't have if traded a $21 million dead money hit. Like his contract was restructured oddly. And you would think most guys that don't necessarily have some of the erratic behavior of Antonio Brown of his caliber would get more than a third and a fifth. So I'm not saying the model of the team takes a huge cap hit and gets no trade compensation. I'm simply saying if a player that has a reasonable contract that would fetch maybe a first-round pick just says, I don't want to play here anymore, will we see that happen? Because we see it happen often in other sports, almost never in the NFL. Antonio got traded despite the cap hit stuff, despite the erratic behavior. So a guy that maybe has a cleaner rap sheet, not rap sheet's the wrong word, but a cleaner record, if you will, and it doesn't have a contract structured that way, he would be more attractive and I think more likely of a candidate than Antonio.
I think Antonio, if Pittsburgh would have gone to him and offered him the same deal, he would have stayed in Pittsburgh. So he's trying. I know so.
So you think it was all the money?
I know so. I told you from the beginning man, this is all about money. Because watch Antonio's interviews earlier in his career about Ben. Oh, man, I'm so lucky to be here with the Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm so lucky to have a franchise around me, Pittsburgh Steelers. Then all of a sudden, when they started caring about him being late, and he knew he didn't have any other guarantees, and he's not the highest paid receiver anymore, that's what all this was about. That's why he had to go out of Pittsburgh, so he can get new money.
Then given that they only got a third and a fifth for him, do you think they should have done that? Do you think when Art Rooney met with him and Drew Rosenhaus, as we just heard about, that they should have offered him a contract similar to this?
No, I wouldn't have given an extension. So I wouldn't have traded him either.
You would have just.
If you want to play football, you're going to play football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If not, you can go down that dang on water slide I see in the back of your house. At some point, you got to put your foot down. And he's got 3 younger kids. Hey, man, you can go through $30 million in a hurry in South Florida. All right? So I would have put my foot down. I would have called this bluff on it. All right? Let September roll around. I'm not taking that cap hit, giving away one of my best players for a third and a 5. No, sir. You are not getting ready to run me like that. I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would have put my foot down, especially after the L. Bell. Knowing I was getting ready to lose L. Bell. These two things, they could coexist, but they're not getting ready to happen simultaneous to me. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's what I would have done. He'd still be with the Pittsburgh Steelers today.
Steelers lost 2 of their best players in one offseason. Coming up, how is LeBron coming up short when compared to MJ and Kobe? That's next on First Things First. FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in for the biggest personalities on the biggest stories. We get you started right here with First Things First.
Who gets them started, Jenna Wolfe?
I get you started, Nick Ryan.
There you go.
Monday through Friday only on FS1 every day. Welcome back to First Things First.
We're at least 3.5 days.
3.5 days a week. That's what I always say. Work 5, show up 3.5. Vince Goodwill's with us. We're going viral on Saturday. The Knicks suffered a loss to the Kings. The Knicks are going to miss the playoffs for the 6th straight season. Now, a fan had some choice words for owner James Dolan. Take a listen, courtesy of TMZ Sports.
Sell the team! Anything I should sell the team? You want to not come to any more games? Why? That's rude. It's an opinion. I know it's not an opinion. And you know what? Enjoy watching them on TV.
Him, block. Bring him, yeah, him, hold him for Kevin. Hold him for Kevin. Hold him for Kevin.
They hold him for Kevin. They tried to detain that guy and ban him for life from MSG.
I think they did. I think they pulled his. He tried to apply for tickets next year. He tried to get tickets for the season, and they
come on, James Dolan. That's not an irreverent heckle. Like if you're he didn't curse at him. He didn't take a personal insult. He made a request. Sell the team. That's what he asked.
Well, when they kind of threw out Charles Oakley, who's a Knicks legend, they'll do that to Joe Fan without a problem.
Absolutely. And if I own the Knicks and I happen to come, you keep your comments until I get past you and everything. All right? Like, if you want to keep doing this, I do happen to own the team, the building, and everything. I do appreciate the fan coming out for a matinee on a Saturday. That's committed. That's committed to the game.
Pep, our producer Pep, who's a Knicks fan, brings up an interesting point. If the next time they show James James Dolan on the Jumbotron. If the whole arena starts chanting, sell the team, are they going to be playing, stands up, kick them all out? They're playing just in front of me today, boys.
I'm just going to take James Dolan, stay off of TV. The next press conference you're going to be doing, Kyrie, and KD coming to the Garden, and people going to be coming in droves to get to the Garden.
They are coming in droves now. The team's terrible, and they sell out.
That's why they can tell that guy.
Try being a Detroit Lions fan.
On to the Lakers now. Among the many things they have lost, well, Saturday's game for one. That's their 5th straight loss. Lonzo and Ingram for 2, both shut down for the year, and perhaps some of LeBron's invincibility. According to an anonymous Western Conference executive, LeBron is, quote, throwing people under the bus every chance he gets. In fact, another executive chimed in and said, now it's all about deferring and putting blame on somebody else instead of being like an old school guy and saying, I've got to do a better job. I've got to make my teammates better. Great players and great leaders. That's what they do. That's what Kobe would have done. That's what Michael Jordan would have done. All right, Vince, what was your reaction when you read this?
Are we to the point where we're deifying Kobe Bryant now? Like,
how
long has Kobe Bryant been out of the game where we're to the point where we've forgotten that we've seen Kobe Bryant play and we've seen Kobe Bryant's act? I'm trying to figure that out.
No, people forget. That's why we have to make sure that we bring it back up, because how history really played out in people's mind is a lot different.
The revisionist history on Kobe is crazy.
Like, Kobe's one of the 10 greatest players of all time, but let's sort of like leave it there and not make him out to be the greatest teammate of all time either. Let's keep it there. For LeBron, I do think there's part of some frustration there. He's going to miss the playoffs for the first time since his 2nd year in the NBA, and he's been hurt. And I think this is very much underplayed in this. He's been hurt in a way that he has not been able to come back and recover and exert the same amount of effect on winning that he has at any other point in his career. Not just the injury, but being able to come back and play. Like the last time he was seriously hurt, he was in Cleveland that first year back. He missed 8 games with the back injury. He came back and was gangbusters. They won 12 in a row, and they cruised all the way to the NBA Finals. He missed all that time and came back, and although the numbers look like it, he didn't look like the same player. Like,
and what
the
did
gap
he say,
between him and
when he shortly after he came back around the All-Star break, what he was going to do?
Activate
playoff mode. And what happened?
He went to the gas and nothing but air came out. You know how you start your car in high school? Well, for me, I ain't had one of them good cars. Nick, that's a different story and everything.
You don't even know what car I had in high school. Yeah.
That's what he looked like those first 5 games coming back.
And it was, to your point, the numbers are there and his plus-minus there, the effect, he was mostly on the offensive end the same guy he was before the injury. But this time of year, he goes to a different level, sometimes earlier than other times, but he's always been able to hit it, and he wasn't able to hit it. But at this point, there are a lot of people around the league that do not like LeBron, do not like the way LeBron's changed the power structure, do not like the way LeBron conducts his business. There haven't been a lot of real room to criticize him the last 7.5 years. And now there's a ton. And instead of just focusing on what I think is totally fair criticism, his involvement in the recruitment of Anthony Davis, how that hurt the team. His involvement, as was reported more the last few weeks, in his selection of the players on the team. That's fair. His lack of, I think the one part there that's a little fair is the lack of accountability of, I need to play better, just even if that's not true, like just to take leadership. But this other stuff of, here's what Kobe would have done with these guys. Kobe would have been standing in a parking lot demanding they trade him. I watched him do that to Andrew Bynum. I watched him kill Smush Parker. So we know that part of it. And the other part of it is the Lakers' problem this year is multifaceted, but the biggest one has been the injuries. And I mean, they're still coming. With Ingram now done for the year, with the concerning the blood clot in his shoulder.
That's serious.
It's serious.
That's serious.
Lonzo being shut down for the year. They've got a lot of issues. The idea that LeBron wasn't enough of a rah-rah guy is near the bottom of the list in my eyes.
Yeah, it's been a horrible year. It will be known as the lost year. And if they don't win a championship with LeBron being with the Lakers, it will start with this right here. How the first roster was put together, how LeBron got injured in the first year. Is he still the best player in the world? I don't think so, because he's not going to be in the playoffs. If you're not in the playoffs, can't be the best player in the world. And when you're LeBron James and you decide to, in free agency, because he didn't look at any other teams. He decided he was going to the Lakers long time ago. So when you decide to do that and your first year doesn't go well, he's going to get a lot of the blame. You know the reason why? How much faith do we have in Magic Johnson, Rob Pelinka? Not a whole bunch.
Right.
Everyone else on the roster is either young or an old veteran just trying to hang on. So LeBron James is right there for the picking to be able to get the blame. Because if they would have won, he would have gotten the credit.
I'll say this. The turning point of this season actually happened, I believe, in New York, in Brooklyn, rather. They were here. They were 18-13. In the locker room before the game, LeBron talked to Dave McMenamin of ESPN and said, I'd love to play with Anthony Davis. That game, now the players didn't know anything about those comments. He sort of whispered it. We were all in the locker room just, messing around. He said it, the story went up around halftime. They lost the game. In the locker room, it was a morgue. Like, the players were glued to their phones. It was super quiet. Like, contrary to what people believe, losing one game is losing one of 82. People don't care that much in December. But the spirit of that team drastically changed. A week later, it was Christmas, LeBron got hurt, and everything else went down from there. But that night, I was able to see the spirit of that team, the momentum that they had built. Those young guys felt like, oh, he's no longer with us. Because as great as Anthony Davis is, if they want him, it's going to cost them me.
Right.
Exactly.
So much of this season is based around what's going to happen in free agency. How much do you think of how far this Laker team has dropped is going to affect who they can bring in?
I think, look, if Kawhi Leonard didn't want to come to the Lakers, them not making the playoffs this year isn't going to make heads or tails on whether he wants to do that or not. Because they're still the Lakers. If you want to play with LeBron James, if you want to play with him, then this year is not going to make a big difference because he has a body of work. And actually, this year may help you because you can see, okay, he's no longer the best player in the game by such a wide margin. He knows that he's going to need superstar help. He's going to allow me to be more than a role player, like he turned Kevin Love into a role player. He turned Chris Bosh into a role player. He doesn't have that room because he's no longer the greatest by such a wide margin.
Well, that's the point Broussard made, that you could make a case that if he brings in another superstar, signs in free agency, they are more positioned to get actual credit than Wade got, than Kyrie got. But the other thing that happened this weekend is, and we alluded to it earlier, this Brandon Ingram blood clot situation, what do you think that does, forget the free agency part of it for a moment, to the trade market, to his ability to be the key piece in an Anthony Davis trade, because he was playing the best basketball of his career after the All-Star break?
He was playing such great basketball by a wide margin compared to what he had done before. Now you're starting to question, do you believe in it? Not just believe in the basketball, but do you believe in the health in his body and where it's going to go? Because blood clots, they cost lives. They cost careers. Chris Bosh and some other guys in other sports, like, this is such a serious thing that even if you're negotiating with the Lakers, are you negotiating? Do you feel like you're negotiating in good faith, that they're literally giving you all the medicals and everything else, that you can say, okay, you know what, if I'm New Orleans, I'll take Brandon Ingram knowing this problem. Hell, if you're Brandon Ingram, do you want to go to New Orleans with the injuries that those guys have had and some of the problems that players have had
with that medical staff
over the past few years?
Health issue.
Seriously. So I think it's a problem for Brandon Ingram. It's a problem for the Lakers. This is the worst
he might not be
possible thing.
tradable.
Yeah, Look, assuming that even if he gets a clean bill of health, because Chris Bosh got the clean bill of health the second time, came back and played, and then they said, oh, it's recurring. You don't want to trade for a guy and
that's
have
one
to worry
blood clot
about
away
that.
from the doctors maybe saying you can't play anymore because you can't fly. Like, it is the Bosh, you're totally right. He came back. People forget, he came back. And now his was more serious, and I understand was caught later. I get all that. But he came back. And then he got another one, and he wanted to play. He just announced his retirement a couple weeks ago. He really wanted to keep playing.
Yeah, no NBA doctor will clear him to play. Chris Bosh.
All right, Vince, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really good stuff.
Good stuff, man.
Take a break coming up.
It's
Could
nice.
the AB trade be trouble for Derek Carr? That's next on First Things First.
Damn it.
Player of the Year candidate Marcus Howard, defending champion Villanova, and the rest of the Big East battle it out for conference supremacy. The 2019 Big East tournament tipping off at Madison Square Garden March 13th through the 16th on Fox, FS1, and on the Fox Sports app. Back with Brian Westbrook, continuing with the Antonio Brown story. Quick recap now. New team, the Oakland Raiders. New quarterback, Derek Carr, and new head coach, John Gruden. Carr seems excited to join forces with Brown, tweeting, "Brother, let's get to work." Here's how Gruden described Antonio Brown before facing him last season.
I've told all our receivers, if you get a chance to watch him practice, you'll see what unlocks the greatness in him. He's the hardest working man, I think, in football. Hardest working player I've ever seen practice. And I've seen Jerry Rice, I've seen a lot of good ones. But I put Antonio Brown at the top And if there's any young wideouts out there, I'd go watch him practice, and you figure out yourself why he's such a good player.
Nobody argues with that. Everyone can agree that he's.
I can argue with that. Jerry Rice worked just as hard and show up on time.
Okay, so that's
okay.
That was my point. So I was going to say that the hardworking part is not.
Just stop that, Gruden.
Well, how good a fit is Antonio Brown in Oakland? But given the quarterback, the offense, and the head coach that he's going to be matching up.
Yeah, they have some issues offensively. Quarterback has to be elite. Derek Carr hasn't been elite his entire career. They need a running back. They need a running game. To solidify their offense. They don't have that. Offensive line has struggled, gave up 52 sacks last year. That's a problem right there. They have to figure out what they're going to do with Jared Cook, and he's a free agent, so there's that. Do you add Antonio Brown to all of that equation? He helps Derek Carr. He'll help our running attack. He'll also find a way to get the football. So you talk about chemistry, he's going to get the targets. John Gruden will throw him the football. So I think he's a good fit. You add 15 touchdowns to any team. It's a good fit. That team needs an awful lot of different things offensively to be a good football team offensively. He can't fix all those different things that they need.
No, he can't. John Gruden's been coaching the NFL 12 years, and I just think it's important that people understand what he has been and what he hadn't been. All right? Because Antonio, 6 straight years, 100 and at least 1,200 yards receiving. So is John Gruden, what will he do with that? I don't know. John Gruden has never had a 100 reception receiver and a 1,200-yard season together. He's only had 2 wide receivers that have reached 1,200 yards. Also, his offenses in 12 years in the league, passing offense in the top 10, he's only done it twice. As far as a top 10 offense of 12 years, he's only been in there 4 times. So John Gruden in big-time offenses, we just giving him this credit and everything, but they're not true. So now with AB, what's he going to do? Because AB is used to being targeted a maximum amount. He's used to getting the football and scoring touchdowns. So he's going to have to be very, very creative. This is a team that has a number of holes to it. The one thing that I like coming out of it was they had Derek Carr involved in the recruitment of Antonio. So to me, that tells me that they have given him the confidence that they're going to move forward with him as a quarterback. And I do believe that that continuity, being in Gruden's offense, will help the quarterback. And, of course, AB being there will help, too.
Nick, you haven't been 100% sold on Derek Carr.
No, and I don't think Gruden was either. I think Gruden was saying one thing about Derek Carr, then got there, saw who he actually was on the field, and said, well, let me pump the brakes on this. This is the best quarterback I've ever coached.
He said, I'm coming out of retirement for
him. And then he got there, and he started tearing the team down. He started trading away pieces, which the only way the moves they made last year make sense is if you look in the spectrum of, oh, he thinks they don't have their quarterback. He thinks they're going to have to draft a quarterback. He's looking at 2020.
As many draft picks as
let's clear the books, collect draft picks, clear up our cap, all that. But I also think he understands that they might not get Kyler Murray even if he wants him this year because the team drafting #1 might want him. Maybe they don't like Haskins. Maybe they don't know if Haskins will be there at 4. He knows it's more likely than not that Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback for at least 1 more season. So there is an element of the Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper situation where what was one of the reasons the Cowboys paid a premium for Amari Cooper? Because they had to find out about Dak. They had to give Dak a fair opportunity, what he could do with a #1 receiver. And so now with Derek Carr, if this might be his last audition year, you can't send him out there with the wide receivers they had. They had a tough wide receiving core with Amari Cooper. Once you get rid of Amari Cooper, they were one of the most bereft of talent wide receiving cores in the entire league. Now you get the guy at the top of the league. So even I think the narrative around Gruden and his era, his time as a head coach was greatly inflated, and CC pointed out those numbers. But that is independent of this fact. You got Antonio Brown for the 66th and the 141st pick of the draft. That is a huge win. If you want to look at it as one big transaction, you traded Amari Cooper and a 3rd and a 5th for Antonio Brown and a 1st. And when you look at what those 2 guys are as players, I think Amari's a good player. But you can look at Amari's best individual statistical production. That's not even 1 season. That's his best, most receptions 1 year, most yards, all that, compared to the average season from Antonio Brown. And you realize that one player is a very good player. The other player is a great player. And they got more in return for the 1st than they had to give up for the 2nd. That's a win no matter who your coach is.
Antonio Brown, obviously a Hall of Fame type of player. This is what Oakland Raiders have? They have some draft picks, 4 draft picks early on in the draft. That's going to be the make it or break it for this John Gruden coached football team. What can they do with these draft picks? Can they solidify that offensive line? Can they find someone else to be a running back in free agency? And then they have to fill in those other holes that they have. There's plenty of them, like you mentioned, CC. John Gruden has to keep this thing together. He coached Keyshawn Johnson. He found a way to make things work with Joey Galloway down there in Tampa. He can coach some good talent. He just has to make it work with Antonio Brown.
And your point on the draft conversation, just quickly, should also include in 2020 they have an extra first-round pick. So if with Antonio Brown, if they spend their draft picks, they don't draft a quarterback this year, and Derek Carr still doesn't take the step people want him to take.
They have 5 first-round draft picks the next 2 drafts.
Yeah,
right.
That's huge.
And so you can use it in 2 years to get your quarterback then.
Antonio Brown is coming out of a situation where if he got into anything with the head coach, he basically won. He kind of got what he wanted. If he wanted to show up late, if he wanted to show up to whatever he seemingly wanted, Mike Tomlin sort of let him have it. It's not going to be that way in Oakland. Is there a conversation that has to be had between John Gruden and Antonio Brown, or what is the dynamic of that relationship?
Well, first of all, Jenna, to think that John Gruden is some disciplinarian and Mike Tomlin is not. Like, for one, in Pittsburgh, Antonio didn't get everything he wanted. He did get some superstar treatment, but he wasn't getting more than Ben Roethlisberger was getting because all the stories that have come out. So Mike Tomlin has a way of doing things. I mean, Gruden is not the type of disciplinarian. I know from an image standpoint, he likes to, but there's always been some stuff going on with Gruden's team. And to me, how does he deal with this superstar? How does he manage him? And how does it get when it's bad? What are they going to do? Because they're going to have some blow-ups on the sideline. And the reason why you have blow-ups, miscommunication, and what you told me during the week is not playing out. And also a guy used to winning. Guys do not want to lose. And so you're going to see his face in the camera with Gruden. And I don't know how he's going to be able to resolve it because the guy's got guaranteed money. And when he didn't have guaranteed money, he wasn't showing up. Now he's got guaranteed money. I don't know what his behavior is going to be. You hope that he's a different type of player. John Gruden bringing him in. Now you have to be the leader. You didn't have to be the leader in Pittsburgh. You had Big Ben. He wanted to be the leader. That was the company guy. That was a guy that the team wanted to be the leader. Now you're here in Oakland. You have to be the leader. Derek Carr, the quarterback, hasn't been that guy because of his play on the field.
Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.